WRA biologists that are working with NRCS can provide you with the burn plan specific to your operation, to your farm. And that's what you would want, and then you would follow that basically year after year and go back and check on it. And that would give you a good safe way for, and depending on what your objectives are. But,
Commissioner Holbert?
Yeah, Mark, these areas that I'm assuming we're clear cutting them on the WMAs, or they select?
No, select cut, it was,
Okay.
like on that
Do we,
slide work.
my biggest question is, do we have the manpower to take care of these areas? I know with NRCS, in West Tennessee, a lot of your CRP grasslands is really trees. I mean, it's grown up, nobody's taking care of it. There seems to be such a lack of enforcement. I don't know if that's the correct word, but you know, it's totally not quail habitat, even though that's, in my opinion, what it was meant to be. If we do all these things, we need to be sure we have the manpower to contain it to what it's supposed to be, instead of just doing it and let it grow back up. I just hate
That
to
is
see
one
us
of the
do all
things,
that.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that is one of the things that we wrestle with, is more land we keep in an open stage like that. It does, even though it's periodic, it does take manpower to do that. Having the gyro track is one thing that we did in the past, getting those, because it's quick to get, and especially on the more fertile grounds, it's quick to get out of that cycle where you're maintaining it, weather throws you back, and all of a sudden you got a field of saplings. So we have that in order to try to recover some lands. We also have started a volunteer program within the agency, whereas for example, if Quail Forever chapters or others, with university students register as an official volunteer and they work on our WMAs doing things, we can actually count that on a federal wages rate. It's about $21 an hour, and we can match that with Pittman-Robertson dollars, and the regions will have discretion over that as far as at a certain point later in the year where they can choose to do projects. And sometimes it may take where we have to contract some of that maintenance work out, whether it be prescribed burning or somebody coming in to do disking, things like that. So it will be a battle to try to maintain that sweet point where we have the manpower to keep these areas in the kind of habitat stages that we desire them to.
Commissioner, if I may, I think you have a great point, and that's one of the challenges.
Could you, Andy, can you come up to the mic and state who you are, your name and all, please?
Andy Edwards, Regional Representative for Quail Forever. And Commissioner, I think you have a great point that management is a huge concern. It's a huge concern for us at Quail Forever as well. And in talking with these WMA managers that are at the focal, the anchor WMAs, that's one of their concerns as well. They all have a great passion for doing things towards quail. Use, for example, Bart Camp Barons. Wes is really working hard for quail. The Southern Middle Tennessee chapter was able to purchase $1,000 worth of chemical to help him, knock back the sweet gum invasion that's going on down there. And you're right, I see that at Wolf River where they've got a ton of great habitat potential there. Just needs a little bit of tweaking with management. And so, if there's anything that we could offer up as a takeaway, that of course everybody needs more money, but management as a component on those WMAs is a huge thing that we would love to see. They've been identified, but as of yet, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but there's not been a lot more dollars put towards quail management on those anchor WMAs. So we would of course love to see something, if there's any way possible, we would love to see some dollars go towards that.
One great example was what the Smoky Mountain Quail Forever chapter did. They ponied up $6,000 to, I believe it was, to hire a technician for several months to work with Bill Smith on Kiker Bottoms and some of those other areas. So right there was one vehicle by which we could get extra manpower on our WMAs.
Mark, I was commenting to Harold a minute ago. The first presentation was about planting trees, and this presentation is about cutting trees. So is there an opportunity to work with, or do you work with forestry? Because there seems to be competing interest that they give away trees to be planted, and specifically at Wolf River, there's about 50 acres that had quail on it that's adjoined where I hunt. And the Wolf River Conservancy came down and planted it all in hardwoods about 15 years ago. So I mean, do you work with forestry and people that plan that kind of thing? Because they're planting trees and we're trying to cut them.
Again, some of it's the objective and in trying to increase the quality of the trees that are there. You know, we use different forestry management practices, different types of harvest in order to achieve the various goals. And one area may need a clear cut, another area might need a shelterwood cut, but
I was kind of talking about private landowners. I mean, they've got one that's trying to get them to plant hardwoods for deer and turkeys, and I don't know how you compete against that. I just wonder if there's some kind of partnership to plan.
I hadn't looked closely into that aspect, but
Hadn't thought about
I would
that,
definitely keep that in mind. And it all depends, again, on some lands may be more open, and the landowner has a desire to establish some mass-producing hardwoods on there, whereas other areas we're looking to open it up more for quail habitat. And so, you know, every landowner's a little different, and that's where our wildlife habitat biologists come in, as they try to develop a management plan that achieves the goals that they want to achieve and also has good wildlife habitat benefits and hopefully help their, you know, income wherever they can too, and achieve all those goals. And
It seems to me, and I'm just quoting, but dealing with landowners in my business, that, you know, the CRP programs, they tend to do whatever pays them the most. I mean, I'm just being completely honest with you. If trees pay them more, they're going to plant in trees. If the native grasses will pay them equal to, then they're going to do whatever they prefer. But majority of the time, they're going to do whatever. So if we could get the pay the same for trees and the native grasses and the CRP programs, I think you'd see a lot more native grasses, because I think people prefer that because it's much easier cleanup in 10 years or 15 years than it is if you plant it in trees. So that's just something I don't know if y'all could work on.
you know, the bobwhite safe practice has about the highest level of incentives that there are on the continuous sign-up practices. So, you know, we have set that practice at a level that's at least as high as that we can offer in the CRP.
Commissioner Cook?
You know, here in Middle Tennessee, we have a lot of folks with, 100, 200 acre farms. We don't have the thousands of acres. So what size farm really would you want to deal with to really make a difference? Because you can't do a lot of little 25 acre farms.
Well, sometimes we do, especially the further east you head, the smaller farm size you tend to get, and just in general, Tennessee is like 4th or 5th ranked as far as smallest farms in the country. Again, part of it depends on what are the surrounding lands. You know, it may be a situation that, you know, nesting cover is what's particularly missing on that track. So I know Clint Bourne has worked with a landowner with 25 acres and had a pretty impressive bobwhite response on a fairly small area of ground, where I think nesting and brood rearing cover was the thing that was missing from the surrounding landscape. So, you know, we work with, you know, we'd like to have, you know, larger landscapes where the landowner's able to maintain the habitat. Okay, the larger the better, but we don't necessarily preclude from working with a small landowner, because sometimes you may have bobwhites just living on the edge there, and all they need is some more cover and to give them a little higher chance of, you know, being sustainable into the future.
Any other
And then you never know whether they'll be able to talk their neighbor into doing more too. So we don't like to shut that door.
Any other questions from the commission? From the public? Would you please come to the mic and state your name?
Well, first of all, I need my lawyer because y'all hate short people.
I'll ask some of the commissioners to stand up.
I spent a lot of years in manufacturing management. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Lance Shake. I'm the chairman or president of the Mid-South Quails Forever chapter. In manufacturing management, one of the things that I learned was if I had a problem, and I called the staff together, and we focused on it, by the time we left, 80% of it was no longer a problem. Now, when I listen to what goes on here, I don't hear a priority. If we make quail habitat, quail restoration in Tennessee the #1 priority of the organization, I guarantee you there will be mass improvement. let me emphasize something. I heard, well, we talk about deer and we talk about turkeys. People, there is no shortage of deer. There is no shortage of turkey. There's no real shortage of fish in the reservoirs or the streams of this state. There is a shortage of quail all over. We need to focus, put our money on that for 2 or 3 years. The deer's going to be fine, the turkey's going to be fine, the fish are going to survive, and the quail will come back.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Cannon?
I appreciate your comments. And today it's easy to forget history because the turkey were not here, the deer were not here, the fish were not here. And this commission can assure you that the quail have been a priority, but nobody, including your organization, has come up with that magic formula. And for the 5 years I've been on this commission, it has been a focal point. You have our word on that. At the same time, it's been a moving target. And so you had the folks trying things in Kiker Bottoms and the other areas of our state. So it has been a priority, sir. But even you all are struggling too. And the best way to solve this struggle is locking arms. So our priority is the resources of this state, including the quail. And it is getting attention. I think everyone in this room is struggling as to what the answer is. It's not as easy as the deer or the turkey populations have been.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm going back up a little bit, is that all right? My name's Rusty Rust, and I had a question for you. You know, I've got a 50-acre piece that's already probably in exactly what you would like. Now, if I've got that piece, do y'all do a stocking effort after you come and view it, or how does that work?
We do not stock quail. Again, Penrith birds, we don't, there's a lot of problems, and it's not been proven to be an effective measure. And Roger, it kind of hit on earlier, just there's a lot of difficulties and even some questionable success on whether it's, especially where you have, populations existing of Penrith birds. It takes a lot. I listened to a presentation at the Southeastern several weeks ago and asked, how many birds does it take if you're trying to restore birds in an area, and talking about 60 to 80 pairs of quail on 1,000 acres. And again, if there's a small bird with a short lifespan, a lot of predators, we're just not, and few people that would have quail to provide for stocking. Roger may want to, is there anything else you want to add to that?
The other point that I kind of hit on earlier was it's getting those numbers, and it's getting those numbers actually in hand, because trapping these birds is very time, it takes a lot of time. So you have to find them, and in this day and age, the finding is the first problem.
You're talking about wild birds, correct?
Wild birds, absolutely. And then the actually trapping that number of pairs, it doesn't sort of sound, 80 pairs doesn't sound like much. But I've tried to do that before, and it's hard. It's hard to do. It's very difficult, and it can take months, moving on to possibly years to come up with that number of birds. And that, in the meantime, what you stocked, if you started out and you're able to get 10 pairs, let's say, one fall, part of those 10 pairs are dead already by the time you get the next 10 pairs. And so you keep compounding this. And states have tried to do this. States have tried to do this on very large tracts of land. So Ohio's done this, and I think to date they have not had success doing this on several thousand acres of old mined land that they've worked with. And I forget what the numbers are, but they're well over 1,000 birds. And they still haven't been able to get the population established. And the habitat looks, I've been there, I've seen it, and it looks just like Kiker Bottoms, only on top of a mountain. So it's very difficult to do, and so that's why we're using this process that we're using. And so in your case, what I suggest is getting with our folks, our private lands folks, and talking about where your property fits relative to all kinds of other properties in that landscape, and maybe seeing if you've got neighbors that actually do have quail, and figuring out ways to link your 50 acres into their 50 or their whatever acres that they may have, and build it that way. That's the way the focus area type thing sort of works, is to try to work at those places that you can go at any given time and then link them all together the best you can.
Thank you. Roger, is part of the equation predator control? I've not heard anybody mention that. It just seems like there's more and more coyotes and all, and surely they're having an effect on it too and trying to reestablish them, aren't they?
The coyotes and, the predator situation is, it's changed, and that's one of the things that we're still trying to learn about, is where that fits in the present situation. But here's kind of the general picture of what that looks like. Predators are a problem in two situations. One of them is where you need to intensively manage a population of quail to really produce a lot of birds for harvest. So, bring in the things that y'all hear about at Tall Timbers Research Center and some of those plantation areas that some of you may have hunted on some of those areas in the past. But those are areas where you need the land to produce more birds than the land can really produce all by itself, and so you have to do extra things, including control predators, artificially feed, do a lot of these things. Again, very costly stuff. In the past, we had lots of trappers out there all over the countryside. I count myself as one of those. I did a lot of that. Numbers of a lot of these little predators were kept nicely in check with the trappers that we had out there. We don't have that anymore, and so we don't have really even a base of people that know how to trap and catch a lot of these animals to reduce the numbers. And then, we can move on into this. But the second place where predators become a problem is when you get down to a point where you have a very small acreage. Let's say this gentleman's 50 acres that he talked about, and you're trying to get the population up on a relatively small area, and there's not a lot of extensive habitat in that whole landscape part, which is one of those elements I mentioned in the NBCI. Predators can home in and really do damage to a small population of quail on a relatively small area. And so those are those little fragmented, localized populations are the one problem. Then the other problem is where you want to have a premier quail hunting area where you have lots of coveys to hunt.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Don McKenzie. I'm the director of the National Bobwhite Conservation Initiative based at the University of Tennessee. And I wanted to respond to the commissioner's concerns about and frustrations about how we're all wrestling with what works for bobwhite restoration and how to do it better than we've done in the past. And one of the functions of the NBCI is to pull together the experts in bobwhite conservation from all 25 states that make up the initiative. Every state in bobwhite range has a long history of successes and experiments and failures in trying to restore bobwhites. And the NBCI has been able to pull together experts from those states, share our knowledge, share our successes, share our failures, and try to learn from those and create a better mechanism and a better system for approaching the problem and challenge of bobwhite restoration. The focal area program that Roger and Mark talked about that the NBCI helped facilitate was completed just last year in 2014. It establishes standards for creating bobwhite restoration focal areas that all states share and had input in creating these standards, thresholds, protocols for monitoring bird populations and habitat accomplishments. The purpose for creating that whole focal area program was to address the frustrations that you expressed about we don't really know what to do because we've tried so many different things, they don't seem to have worked. So our aim now, beginning with the program that was just completed last year, is to establish a network of properly created bobwhite focal areas using the best knowledge and experiences of 25 states and a long track record of experimentation to create a network of successful quail focal areas in 25 states that will then be the compelling evidence for all of us to look at and enjoy the success of and be reminded that habitat is the problem, habitat is the solution. We have the technical expertise to make bobwhites on the land using habitat techniques. So in the next 3 to 5 to 8 years, we're anticipating this program will be adopted in all 25 states, and we'll have a network of successful quail focal areas that will answer a lot of the questions and address the kind of frustrations that you expressed about not really being sure how to approach this problem. So Tennessee is now a part of that 25-state collaboration to approach quail restoration methodically and using the best science and experience that we have.
Thank you.
And let me clarify something, because sometimes I don't come across the way I mean to. I am frustrated. I am blank frustrated, if you will. But that frustration's on behalf of everybody in this room, and that includes you all. I think we're all frustrated. And the fact that you have completed this study, I really mean I'm looking forward to us locking arms with you all. And I wanted to assure you, this is a heck of a priority. You can ask Ron Crabtree. I mean, this is something that is discussed, and the things that are coming up today, that is good news to us. The past is frustrating for all of us, and I think we're on the right path. We have to have a fair number of priorities, sir. That's all I meant by that. It's not something we can hone in on and say, this is number one for this year, because we have to be about some other things, but this is a part of that very top priority list. And so just the fact we're giving it the time we are, I can assure you it's getting attention.
To his point, when he was talking about predators and trapping, and a lot of people don't trap anymore, it's kind of a lost art. I happen to be a trapper. I'm from Indiana, so excuse me, I'm one of those Yankees that's got a D in front of it. But in Indiana, I consider to be a trap-friendly state. Up there in Indiana, my sons, they have their own fleshing boards. Everything is stretched and dried and sent to Canada. We bypass the middleman. They have red fox and coyotes is one of the things we need to get rid of. Beavers is one of the things they need to get rid of down here. In Indiana, you couldn't trap the bobcat. My son said, I got a contact in Missouri. Let's go to Missouri and trap bobcats. So we went to Missouri. Out of state license, we trapped bobcats, coyotes, coons. They wanted to come down here for the beaver. We looked it up. $400 per trapper to come into this state and trap. It made it unfeasible for us to do that because a beaver pelt was $30. So maybe if you look at, it's more than just how do we get to quail, it's how do we control the predators and how do we make all this work together? And how can we make this, especially in my eyes, a much more trapper-friendly state? Because like in Indiana, they don't have offset jaws, which forces you to go to drags, which takes you longer to run your lines. You know, I mean, it's all about money to the person that's out there trapping. It's a very expensive thing to lay out hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars for traps to be able to do that too. So it's a big picture.
Mr. Cox?
Well, I read a news article about eyeworms in quail in Texas that was affecting the populations. Anybody heard that, knows that? Is that something that is brand new, or is that something that could have affected our quail, or?
Yeah, to that, I can address that. Yeah, there's an eyeworm that they found in quail in Texas. So this is on sort of the rolling plains region of Texas, north central Texas, Red River Valley, and some of that. That eyeworm actually has been known for a long, long time, and it's been found in quail. It's been found in pheasants and other birds over time. This particular phenomenon recently of their finding a relatively high incidence of those eyeworms in quail there in Texas is a relatively new thing to science. And why they're there, why they're not being found in other places is really just not known at this point. And whether they're in quail here in Tennessee, it's unknown, but I've not heard of any being found. So More on that maybe later if something new happens.
Yes, sir. Please come to the podium.
Pleasure to be here. My name is Butch Bice. I'm with the Quail Forever Club here in Nashville. And I would like to speak on behalf of a landowner. I own a tract of land, 400 acres, that's just adjacent to Cheatham County. It's right out from Mountain Bottom. It's right there. And I clear cut about 3 years ago. And that clear cut has come back with seed base, all kinds of grasses. The problem I'm having is around the old stumps. I'm having the shoot ups. And that gets to your issue about maintenance. My property is now an oasis for deer, turkey, songbirds, but no quail. And the Cheatham Wildlife Management Area is really a desert for those animals because it's all high timbered, few acres, but a lot of non-productive trees. So the deer and the turkey are coming to my place. And my point being is that even if we do have the maintenance issues down the road for these properties, if we can open up 400 or 500 acres to clear cutting every 1 or 2 years, you're going to create a pattern where these birds and these wildlife can move and hopefully create a better population of wildlife in the state, especially songbirds. You know, I go up in the springtime, you wouldn't believe the birds that are thriving in that area. So that's just a comment of a landowner who would like to see some help on the wildlife management areas. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Sorry, I was looking at that. A few comments. I sympathize with y'all on the trapping thing. We did change the type 120 non-resident license. It's 201 now. We revisited that. I think we had some complaints about it last year, and it is now $201. So just to get that clear. But I farm for a living. That's how I make my sole income. But and habitat, in my opinion, is the key to the bobwhite quail's livelihood. I mean, they love the early successional stuff. And our key, I guess, to focusing is partnerships. And our new bobwhite quail plan it should show that we are putting that as a high priority. Even the focus of the whole agency, we've kind of reverted from restoration into a habitat, for the whole state. That also shows that we're putting that as a priority and focusing on everything. But we really need our partnerships. I mean, it's like Commissioner Holbert related to, most of the land in the state of Tennessee is privately owned. And I farm my land. When I bought one of my farms at home, it was grown up, had 3 coveys of quail on it. I can't find one now. And it just boils down to good farming practices is not conducive to quail. So we can partner with NRCS, we can partner with UT. I mean, these early successional buffers, I mean, any little tract of land, 25 acres, if you talk with your landowner, I mean, your neighbors and stuff, and you can partner. I mean, if a quail's got room to jump from here to there and here to there, they'll be there. I mean, and predators, quail's the bottom of the food chain. I've heard everything from turkeys to wild hogs to, I owe somebody $5 for saying wild hogs. I apologize. But anyway, quail are just the bottom of the food chain, and it's going to take a concerted effort by everybody. We're putting forth our people. We want to work with your people. We want to work with your people and NRCS. And anything we can do, we're here. So that being said, look forward to working with you.